Let me see if I. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Any Good That I May Do podcast. Today, I'm joined by one of my islands in the stream, Jonathan Carroll. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. JC's joining me from his car, and I will be putting this on my YouTube channel for those who want to see his handsome face. So,
Yes, I am in the car.
yeah, he says this is fine. So we'll do it this way. I'm all about doing a podcast, however it feels right. JC is a friend of mine from he's where do you live, JC?
I live in Kentucky.
In
I
Kentucky.
live, kind of the northeastern corner of Kentucky.
Right. And I know JC, I call him JC. I think that was just his handle for back in the Cavino and Rich days, much like he might know me as Narmstrong, because we both had really lame handles on the Cavino and Rich forum. But that's how we came to know each other, is chatting on the forum, listening to that show. And we eventually were lucky enough to hang out when we were in New York. And the cool thing was, actually, when Jody was on my podcast a few episodes, I told our story about the islands in the stream.
Yeah.
That very weird serendipitous event that happened. That's still like, I don't think
I
there's
still
any
can't.
real. Sorry,
No, I don't think. I still sometimes I wonder if it really happened. Like
it's still.
it was so odd
I'll just
and
quickly
it's
tell it
surreal.
again, or you tell it again quickly, because I've already told it. We'll hear it in your words for people who don't know the little
Yeah.
story.
So the radio show we listened to, they were doing. You could do like karaoke and you could send in goofy songs. And Neil and I decided we were going to do Islands in the Stream, and then there was they had talked about doing live karaoke in New York and it didn't happen. And so we were talking about it and we walked into the hotel and the lady that was doing karaoke in the hotel lobby when we walked through the door was singing the song Islands in the Stream. So it
The
was just the way it worked out was incredible.
I mean, the odds of that, because it's not like it's a top 40 song currently. I mean, it's a great classic song, but we're in kind of a ritzy hotel in New York at that
Yeah.
exact moment, waiting for our elevator. I still remember you're like, listen to that, listen to what's playing. It's just, I mean, like, I don't know the significance of that. There probably is none, but in my mind, it was always like, wow, that's the odds of that happening were very slim. So it was, to this day, and probably till I'm in the ground, every time I hear that song, it's going to make me think of you.
Yeah, exactly. The same thing here. And my wife will be like, is this yours and Norm? This is your song with Norm? You want me to turn it up?
Yeah. So who's who in that? Like, we never ever finished writing the
And
song.
I don't think it would matter. I think we could interchange. I could be Dolly for a minute. You could be,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
time, and then you're Dolly the next. So
Maybe this is our cue to finish that song one day, sit down and write it and perform it.
I
Maybe for
think we need
part
to.
two of the podcast.
Yeah.
So the reason we're doing this podcast, Jonathan is my spiritual consultant. He's becoming that these days. Every now and then, I'll send him a text, and Jonathan's a Baptist Christian. And tell me what that means, because to be honest, I went to a Baptist church when I was a kid as well. I slept through a lot of the sermons, to be honest with you, but I still some of it stuck, and I
Yeah.
can't claim to be the most. I'm not even close to being devout in my Christianity, but the way things are in the world today, it's got me reconsidering some of these things. And so tell us about, like, the Baptist branch of Christianity, a brief summary of what the difference is between that and another one, like
Well,
Catholics.
and even within Baptists, like I think the biggest thing that hurt Christianity is religion, and that may sound weird to a lot of people, but eh, you know, I mean, we believe the Bible is true from beginning to end. There's a lot in there that you're not going to understand, but we do believe that it is the truth that Jesus was here on earth, lived 33 years, lived a perfect life, didn't sin, did nothing at all, um, and was crucified, buried, and resurrected, and that through faith in that is the way you become a Christian, is to put your faith in that central belief of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ.
Okay.
Um, there's nothing there is nothing that I can do within my human self that will ever be good enough to get me to heaven. I can't, forgiveness of sins comes. So you mentioned Catholic. One of the big things with Catholics is confessional. Catholics truly believe that their priests are given the authority to forgive them of their of earthly sin, and so they can go into a confessional, confess to the priest. They can do Hail Marys, or they can do whatever the priest instructs them to do. And in their belief, in their heart, that sin is completely gone.
Okay.
Um,
But at Baptists wouldn't
so
Baptists don't have confessional
no, no.
because you have the
Um,
personal relationship, as you say.
yes, and we sin every day. The fact that I'm a Christian, there's all through the Bible it talks about that Jesus Christ came to save sinners. He didn't come to save the religious, and that was eventually what got him crucified, was the fact that the Jewish leaders thought that they knew everything, and that there was no way that this random stranger that was born in a barn could show up and be the Messiah. They expected a king to come in and rule and be all powerful, and which he had that ability. But Jesus came humbled and with humility, and talking with, if you read through the Bible, people with leprosy, um, people with all these different health issues, people that were completely outcast by all of society. They couldn't even live in the same city. That Those were the people that came to Jesus, and those were the people that he went to. And with the death, burial, and resurrection, that sealed it, because before that, the Jewish faith believed that the only way they could get to heaven is if they kept the entire law. And it was over 600 laws. And the only way that Jews were going to go to heaven is they had to live all 637, I think. They could never break one of those ever,
Yeah.
which is physically impossible.
Right.
I mean,
They set a perfect standard for themselves.
they did.
Okay.
And so, the law came from God. You know, it was sent down to Moses. And everybody knows about the first 10 laws, the 10 commandments. Um, and God would deliver the Jews out of captivity here, and they would praise him and be like, he's the greatest thing in the world. And then in no time at all, they were right back into worshiping other idols. They completely turned their back on him, and so he kept sending the law, and they kept breaking it. So the the purpose for Christ coming was, Christ was the fulfillment of the law. He was the only human that was ever on earth that was completely sinless and perfect. He did nothing wrong. And through the death, burial, and resurrection, then that's how non-Jews across everywhere can come to Christ.
Okay. So,
And I will say this. I will start out by saying this, and I said it earlier, but I do believe I believe that the Bible is true. I understand just enough of it to make me dangerous at times. No, but like, I mean, I understand. I understand the key parts, but there's so much in there that people get bogged down with. Was the earth created in a normal 7-day week, is what we look at. you know, were there actual dinosaurs on the ark when God destroyed? There's so much of that, and we actually have an ark. It's called the Ark Encounter. About an hour and 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. Guy named Ken Ham has recreated the ark.
I think I remember hearing about that being built.
Yeah, and it's fascinating when you go in, because he has scientific proof that what he has built is 100% accurate. And you know, I can remember as a kid, I grew up in church, and I can remember sitting there and thinking, this is ridiculous.
seemed
Like,
impossible.
yeah, I'm
I
like,
think
this,
I
so
think
much of it seems impossible.
well, and I think that's, there are a number of problems with the church that I think have hurt it in the eyes of everybody, whether you're religious or not. I mean, I think a lot of people have problems with these things that seem impossible, exaggerations. I think a lot of people have issues with the judgment that comes with what they think a lot of Christians bring towards anybody who isn't of their belief. I think that's the same with basically all the religions that are out there. There's a certain like my belief is the right belief and yours isn't. Like, what do you say to
Hmm.
that? How do you how do you know which is the right belief? I guess at the end of the day, you're just choosing. You're having some sort of
You're literally going on faith.
yeah,
And it's even within the Baptists. I mean, you have free will Baptists who believe that they can just wake up one morning, and that's how I was raised. You, if you're a true free will, that means at any given time you can just wake up and say, "Hey, I'm a Christian." Now, the church I grew up in wasn't quite that literal with it, but you know, then you have so many different branches that believe only certain people are going to be saved, and that's it. And it's God's plan that He may save me, but He won't save you.
yeah,
But one of the most famous things in the Bible is for God, John 3:16. God so loved the world, He gave His only Son, that whosoever shall believeth. And that's what, on Him. So if you truly believe that in the death, burial, resurrection of Christ, and that's the way to get there, and you tell me that you have believed that way, and I tell you that I have believed that way, and that's where all my faith is. I can't judge you and say, well, you're wrong and I'm right. And so many churches and religions have come back with this, well, if you don't do it my way, you're going to hell.
and I think that's where a lot of people. That's the issue a lot of people have with the church. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
it is. It
And I
is.
think like
And
lately I've been thinking in the world, it's like, and I said this recently with another guest on my show. I think we all have different types of faith, whether it's a religious faith or not. Like,
mhm,
and I think right now a lot of people who might criticize somebody who is a devout Christian, they might have their own belief system and they don't even realize it, that it's really just a faith-based system as it is, because so many of us are just, I think about this a lot lately, is because I'm becoming less and less, like, I suppose, trusting of man in
mhm.
everything. And but I realize that the people who think like that our governments are going to save us, or the people that are in charge are looking out for us, that's a type of faith, really.
It is. It's a
You've
religion.
left your,
Honestly, it's a religion at that point.
yeah, because you're basically just saying, I choose to accept that what you tell me is in my interests and you're looking out for me. And I
Yeah.
think really that's where we're kind of being a little, it's almost like, I know people mock Christians and say they're naive for believing in some of the things they believe, but I think it's a little silly and naive to believe that some of the people that are running this planet have our interests at heart. And I mean, that's the key to why I wanted to talk to you about this. I mean, I literally texted you a few weeks or a month or so ago, and I'm like,
Yeah.
feels like we're in the end times, because like I feel
Yeah.
that I can't, I don't know, like I don't see how the world's going to right itself the way it's going. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like, like it seems like there's
I,
no
it,
desire to actually stop wars because there are certain people that seem to benefit from it.
yep.
Uh, we have people playing with viruses in labs and playing God there, and then telling, like, it just, like, everything feels like a different type of faith, I guess. And I don't have much faith in people being able to make the world, I guess,
Well,
normal
no,
again, if it ever was
no,
normal.
I don't know that it ever was.
Yeah.
And
Are we just
I mean,
waking up, do you think? Like, are we waking up, or are we becoming more
I think so.
confused? Like, I
I
find,
think
right,
so.
I think we exist in a time too where there's so much information and there's so many easy ways to mislead people too, that it's becoming harder and harder to even discern what is true, you know. And that's another area where people are like, you'll say like this happened or this person did this, and somebody will say, well, actually that's been disproven by, say, a Snopes or something. But it's like, well, you're just choosing to believe that that's we're all making choices in what we believe. So
Yep.
how do you
And we are,
discern
and
it?
it's, I know it sounds almost like a cop out answer, but honestly, it's faith. And, when you think about it, Christ walked on this earth for 33 years. And there were people that saw literal miracles happen in front of them and still didn't believe that he was the Son of God.
Yeah,
They, they, phys- and, if it was so hard for those people to believe that this happened, and he was who he said, the fact that we're supposed to believe it with no physical proof. Everybody wants proof. Everybody wants, and we live in such a microwave society now. Everybody wants it right now.
mm-hmm.
There's,
They don't want to
oh,
put any
you want,
effort into coming to a fair
no.
conclusion. I think that's a problem with people as well. Is like we want somebody to tell us what's right and wrong, or
Mm-hmm.
what's the truth, and really we're just deciding, oh, I like that guy, or he's on my team, so I'm going
Yep.
to accept that as the truth. We're all doing it.
We all do it. And I think a lot of things that will run people off is because you mentioned the church and religion judging people. And I think a lot of that comes down to if you knew that you yourself had cheated on your wife and killed 3 people and buried their bodies in the backyard, and you came to a church, we were in the same town, and I invited you to church, and you came to church, and the the message at church that day was talking about the 10 Commandments, and it came up that you shouldn't commit adultery, and it came up that you shouldn't kill people. And the only way to get through that is to have faith in God. He will forgive you of the sins that you have done. But you, with a guilty conscience, are sitting there thinking, well, I'm not going to sit here and listen to this guy talk about me cheating on my wife and killing 3 people and this, that, and the other. And so you go back out into the world and be like, well, that church over there, all they do is judge. All they do is judge. When in reality, they were presenting you with a truth, the truth. And yourself wouldn't let you accept that truth, if that makes any sense. And it's, if I tell you, if I stand up in front of somebody and say, you know what, if you have done this sin or that sin, then if you don't repent of your sins and accept Christ as your savior and your only means of salvation, you're going to hell. Then you leave and you say, well, that guy said because I cheated on my wife, I'm going to hell. I don't want to go back there.
Yeah, for fear.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
for fear, and you're not, the Bible says it takes a broken heart and a contrite spirit. You have to get to the point where, and I feel like that, there's some confusion around what the Holy Trinity is, with God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit, all three being the same entity. I would love to tell you that I truly understand all that, but I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Christ was God in human form when he walked on the earth. I know that Christ carried with him a spirit that would truly convict people of sin in their hearts. And that spirit was left here on earth. And that's where the conviction of your heart comes from. Um, and when you feel that and you're thinking, why am I feeling this way? Why am I so aware of all this stuff going on around me that we need to be saved from? Why am I feeling the way of, I realize that what I'm doing is wrong, and I know that it needs to be corrected. Don't, if that ever happens to you, don't just throw that idea out and be like, well, that's just whatever. And at that point, you pray, and God hears prayer. The prayer God hears from those who aren't believers already is just God. I mean, I remember when I got saved, which is common term throughout all Christianity.
You haven't
You
always
know,
been
no. I was in my mid 20s.
okay.
I was 24, 25. I had grown up in church. Um, and a lot of the stuff, but we were sitting in a dorm room one night in college. I was about 19, and I didn't drink. I wasn't a bad human, really, as far as human standards go. I wasn't
You're
out drinking
average,
and
probably.
partying, and yeah, I wasn't like this lunatic partier and all this. And there were some buddies sitting around, and we were all sitting around talking, and one of the guys said, because inevitably those discussions, you always end up talking about this kind of stuff. And one of my buddies said, "Well, if Jonathan's not going to heaven, then we're all doomed." Said, he's the only one of us that'll be there. And that I think that was the first time that I really was convicted of my sin myself, because I thought, you know what? Just because I don't sin the way you feel like you sin doesn't mean that I'm not sinning.
Hmm.
And I wrestled with it, and I quit going to church for a while. My mom was not happy with the fact that I wasn't going. I didn't go.
Did you feel
And
like you weren't doing it properly, for lack of saying it a better way? Like you felt
yeah,
a bit of
I,
hypocrisy, maybe?
I felt a little bit of hypocrisy. I also felt that I kind of got in my head, like, well, you know what? They're right. I'm really not doing like the bad sins, you know, and you justify it with yourself. You're like, oh, I'm a good person, and I remember I heard a sermon one time, and the minister said there will be a lot of good people in hell. And I thought, well, that's kind of ridiculous. Why would you say that? But the more you think about it, just being good on earth is a great thing to be. Don't get me wrong. I mean, be a good person, be a nice person, love your neighbors and help out and do all that stuff. But your earthly works will not save your soul. And I remember we were the church I grew up in. The guy that's the pastor, I actually grew up with him. He was about 4 years older than I am. And, they do, some churches do what's called an altar call at the end of it, where they're like, if you feel like has touched your heart, talk to your heart, please come down if you want to pray. Some churches do it, some churches don't. Some churches almost make it an emotional response because they keep asking and digging. And, I got up and walked down the aisle. I was sitting in the back of the church. I never sat in the back of a church ever. And I was sitting in the very back row. And I got up and walked down through there, and I hugged him, and I couldn't stop crying. Like I knew something changed in me. I knew it. And it was like the weight of everything that I had in me was gone. And I hugged him. His name's Jimmy. And I hugged him. And we stood there at the end of this, halfway down the aisle of the church, and stood there and hugged. And I was just bawling my eyes out. And he said, "Do you feel like you need to pray for the Lord to save you?" And I said, "No, because he already did it when I took the first step out and came this way." Like the minute that I put all of my faith, and I laid all of my turmoil and inner arguing and all of this stuff, I just took it and just laid it down. And I said, "God, this stuff's not going to go away, but I'm not going to get through it if I don't have you." That was in my brain, that's all I said. And I knew right then and there that it was different. It was, I had a horrible mouth, at times. And, a lot of people,
Swearing.
I mean, you knew it. Man, a lot of people didn't know it,
You horrible mouth.
and
You mean the way you spoke, the
oh,
cursing and
just
stuff?
profanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and way more than I should have. And it was taken from me. It was gone. Like
Yeah,
there
I've never
was
heard you swear in the time I've known you.
no, and it was one of these things where it wasn't like it was all that came out of my mouth, but it never wasn't like I never had to make myself stop. It just stopped, and stuff like that. And it's going to be the same but different for everybody. And I think with some of the things you're thinking about, some of the things we're going to talk about, eh, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Neil. I've prayed for you every day since that first text message.
Oh yeah.
Every day that you will find the clarity and the guidance and the security in knowing Christ. It's not. I'm not praying that you will go to church. I'm not praying that you will change this podcast over and it's going to reach millions and millions of people and you're going to be the voice of Christianity in Nova Scotia. Like my genuine prayer for you is that you find it. You find the peace, you find the clarity, you find God. And and that's because I mean I love you as a brother. And that's the prayer that I have for you. And that you can be the example to your kids and your wife and your friends and people who 6 months ago would have thrown you out of the house because you're some crazy zealot. You know what I mean? Like, and not even listen to you. That's tough because, like you said, Christianity is under attack from every possible side right now.
It feels like it. And I tell you, the more that I see that, the more I'm like, there must be something to it. I've
Yeah.
like as a kid, I was always, and most of my life I've been kind of on the fence with so many things. And I find it very difficult to, like I said, discern the truth and all of this. Um, I have my own issues with religion.
Hmm.
But I think like the thing that you said that's interesting to me is, about being good isn't enough. And I sometimes I worry about that, I suppose. Um, I don't know. Don't know where I'm going with that, but I guess like I want to tell you that I have no problem with you for being who you are, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for praying for me. I think my mother does as well. My mother's quite
Hmm.
religious, and I plan on talking to her, but I have fears about talking to my own mother about these things.
Yep.
It's weird,
Oh,
but
I
because
yeah.
I think it's because I know, I know that I feel strange using these religious terms because I don't generally talk like this. But yes, I know that everybody's a sinner. And I feel like if we accept that about each other, and if we can, like, one of the big issues I feel that we have around the world is the way we judge everybody.
Yep.
And like whether it's through religion or another means, like we'd be so much better off if we could, recognize that we're all flawed. So like why not work on you instead of other people?
Hmm.
Maybe you do that through religion or whatnot. But I certainly love these conversations because I'm certainly, as you know, thinking about all the things that are going on and all the beliefs that are going on. And I'm not sitting here and I'm telling you that I'm going to turn and become a devout Christian, but I'm certainly not opposed to everything that it teaches people either. I think there's a lot
Yep.
of value there. I think,
And I think a lot of people associate, and I mean, going to church and being around like-minded people, sharing in your expression of faith, that is important to a Christian. Like that's an important step, but that is not what saves you. You could be. So we could finish this podcast up. You could walk into the kitchen to fix yourself a sandwich, and all of a sudden, it just hits you that. God, I need you. And it can be in your kitchen, it can be in your car, it can be it's not one of these things where you have to go through this ritual in a set building to go through and do it. It's you if you feel it, you can literally say, God, I'm giving it to you. It's yours.
Yeah.
And with that broken heart and that humbled spirit coming to him, and there's a term in Christianity, born again.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
And
what does that mean? Is that what you were when you walked into that church? And
yeah, so it's basically born again. Just it refers to your birth as a new creature in Christ. You're not. It's not a physical birth coming out of your mother again, kind of a thing. It's a spiritual kind of regeneration, I guess. You're born once into this world as man, and you know we you don't it doesn't take you long to realize you can watch a toddler and they'll figure out how to manipulate everything to get their way. Toddlers will literally stand and lie to you right to your face. Those kids were never taught how to lie. It's just there, and
my
that
kids
gets
would never
back.
do that. My kids
Oh no,
never. No.
no, no, never. Nope.
Maybe your kids, Christian
Yeah, I mean
Baptist.
my heathen kids, but you know, but and like you never. It's fascinating when you look at kids because you don't have to teach them that kind of stuff. It's in all of us,
Mm-hmm.
and just the term born again, just that's. I mean, some people can say conversion, however you want to, but it's when it's your spiritual birth. It's the birth of Christ coming into your heart and physically making a change on the inside of you that you don't live and feel and think like you did before. And that being said, you're still going to think and feel the way you did before. A lot of people think, oh, once I'm saved, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that. Where we don't we don't stop being human the day we get saved.
Mm-hmm.
We begin being human with a savior who understands and will forgive us for what we're doing. And that's a distinction that a lot of people, and that's where judgment in church comes in, because we are still the same. We're still the same body. We're still walking the same earth. We're still seeing the same people. And a lot of churches will look at, well, he's supposed to be saved and he did this or that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen churches completely fall apart because of that kind of division. And the Bible is what it is. I mean, I have one right here in my hand.
Yeah.
And
Do you have it regularly? Like, do you just carry it with you to read?
I do.
Yeah. I
I
admit I've
do.
tried to. I've picked up Bibles in hotels that have been placed by those
By the
elves
Gideons.
known as the Gideons.
Yep.
I've never seen a Gideon. I don't know what they look like, but
Hey, we
I've
actually
seen
had a
their.
Gideon. We actually had a Gideon come to our church and talk about the program and how many Bibles they give away and how you can help support them and that sort of stuff. The only one I've ever seen. He looked like he was
Really?
about
Did they look
70
like a
years
normal
old.
person?
They do. It was odd. I was like,
I mean,
yeah,
like
I did.
I've
I'm like you. I expected these little elves that were flying around and dropping Bibles in.
yeah, so I have tried to pick up the Bible a few times and read it, and I struggle with it because I don't know if it's because I'm dull or you have to be in the right mindset for the words that are written there to mean something to you, but I do pick it up every now and then and I try. One of the things that I think about, and I talk about this regularly, one of the quotes, and is this directly from the Bible, let he who is without sin cast the first stone?
Yes.
Okay, so that one line right there is why people shouldn't disregard the whole thing, because that aligns with my belief, because I go back to the way we treat each other. We judge other people for the things they do and consider everybody
Yep.
else to be the problem. We really
And
externalize.
they were going to stone her to death.
Yeah.
That was the religious, the Jews. They were for her crime. They were going to stone her to death. And when Christ stepped in, he was without sin cast the first stone. He didn't come in with he has never broken a law of man. That wasn't the statement that he made, and it showed the importance of spiritual, godly obedience versus man-made laws obedience. He didn't come in and say, okay, if you guys have never broken the law, go ahead and chuck one at her, because they probably could have all done it because they were rule followers, and it's easy to follow the law. It's easy to follow the laws when you're the one making the laws too.
Mhm.
And so when he said that, they laid their stones down. And if you read through the New Testament, pretty much everybody who ever came to Jesus, when there's a story about them, they came to Jesus to be healed from a physical ailment. And he addressed their spiritual health before he fixed the physical ailment of why they were there. And it builds on the fact that if you pray to Jesus and you're like, God, I found out I have cancer, please help me. If you're not already a Christian, he will convict your spirit, your heart of, I shouldn't be asking him for this help. I don't even accept him as my savior. But he will fix your spiritual needs before he will fix the physical needs, because he knows at some point this physical body is going to be gone from here anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that yeah, I mean but that is straight from the Bible. And the Bible hasn't been disproven. That's another thing.
Oh, I mean, the little bit that I know and the things that I listen to, it's getting pretty hard to refute some of the things that are in there, which is what prompted us to want to do this podcast. So we might as well
It
use that
is. and
as a
and
good
the book
segue.
of the book of Revelation is, everybody talks about how hard it is to understand. And we're actually doing a study on Wednesday nights right now, a Bible study on Revelation, and there's a lot going on. And I know, you had mentioned wanting to talk about the Antichrist and the mark of the beast and that sort of stuff. And I don't know, where do you tell me where you want to go now? I'll let you guide us.
Okay, well, I mean, like, I remember years ago, and this wasn't even in church. It was just, I think it was just my friend. I remember my friend's brother said this to me, and I don't know where he got it from, but he said something about the mark of the beast. And all he said was like what it was. Is like, he's like, it's going to be a mark on your hand or your forehead that
Mm-hmm.
that without it you won't be able to buy and sell. And at the time, I just thought, oh, that sounds crazy. But it stuck
Yeah.
with me. It always stuck with me. A lot of the things that I heard as a kid in the church and from my mom and my grandmother, the religious people that were a part of my life, like, there are things that stuck. And I mean, like, it seems like right now, I mean, the way that I don't know what else to call them, the people that seem to be ruling the earth, like
Yeah.
globalists who want, like, all you have to do, and I'm sorry, I know this sounds like crazy things to people that don't maybe know what I've seen or what I listen to, but like, I think if anybody with any ability to discern truth right now can see that the way things are going in the world is like, it's like this movement towards a one government and one
Mm-hmm.
belief system. And a part of that seems to come along with what's being sold as this really convenient method of paying for things. It's secure, it's safe. You'll have your
Yep.
digital ID. You're going to have this thing we don't really know exactly what it is, but it seems like there are things that's kind of the first thing that stuck out to me is That sounds awfully familiar from what I've heard in the past. Like, and I've watched videos explaining what that is, and it sounds, and I've heard, people are, if you're listening to this and you're still here and you're rolling your eyes at what I'm saying, whatever, I don't care. But like, you know, the mark of the beast is basically a buy and sell mark on you that's going to be sold as a convenience and for your necessity. But what it really is like a pledge to worship something. But we
Yep.
don't, and people don't seem to realize that, but in a way it is, because you're saying I'm giving all my faith to you to do this for me. So that's kind of in my mind one of the things that is like, that's frighteningly close to what I've heard is described as the mark of the beast, is
Mhm.
this passport that they want to enact. And I don't think people are concerned enough about it. Like, for me, one of my biggest frustrations in the world today is it seems like there are, like, of course there's all these different groups of people, but there are, in my mind, there's people like myself who are kind of, their mind and the things they're thinking about are on the outside of the mainstream. They're often called conspiracy theorists, they're
Oh
called
yeah.
whatever, but just people who kind of don't take what's given to them as at its face value. Does that make sense the way I'm saying it?
Yeah. It does make sense.
I'm
Yeah, it really
struggling
does.
putting it into words, but like, and then there's the other side, the people who just are like, they're willing to accept it or have faith in it, that it's in their interests or it's
Yep.
easy. And I feel like the way that we are as a society right now is we put ourselves in a corner by chasing a lifestyle that's convenient and easy and comfortable, and relying on everybody else that are in positions of authority to tell us what's right and what's wrong. And they'll give us our food, they'll give us our luxuries, they'll give us these things. So I feel like there are the people that are fine with that and they think that it's always going to be that. But I see the way that things are going and I don't,
Yeah.
that doesn't seem sustainable to me. And people are, because we're all kind of locked into this system, we don't know how to get out of it. We don't know how to change it. So
I know.
I feel like people are holding their breath, hoping for somebody smarter than them or somebody to just say, wait, this will be fine, because the alternative is too scary to think about.
Yep.
Because I don't see
And
how, I don't have, like I keep saying this, but I don't have any faith in people to fix this the way that we have been thinking about things. We're very materialistic. We're very ego driven. We're very much about exploiting each other for our own interests. Like, it feels like everything we do is about, what can you do for me? What's in it for me? What's in it for me? It's a very selfish system. And that's why we're all in it together, and we're in such a in such a mess,
oh yeah,
because
it is a mess.
our, if you could put it on, hang it on one thing, it's our egos, it's our greed, we've just allowed awful people to climb to the top, and now those awful people are making decisions that none of us really seem to want, but none of us know how to avoid. And the
Mhm.
first thing is that mark of the beast that we talk about, or, of course they're not going to come out and say that's what it is, but I feel it's very worth people being aware that this is something that is in this book that a lot of us have discredited, but it's written there that there's something like this coming. And if you just sit back and let it, it's not good times for the world. That's how I honestly
Yep.
feel. And
Okay.
then, like,
Now,
so like,
oh, go
let's
ahead.
start there, but let's also talk about, you know, because there's a bunch of things that seem to be coming true from the book of Revelations, like
Yeah.
it's almost like a roadmap to, this is how it's going to go, and it is going that way. But
Yep.
I
And
don't
and
think
that's exactly
anybody's, other than
that's exactly yeah,
people
that's
like
exactly
yourself
what it
who
is.
study it or know a lot about it. We're just kind of,
And it's so if you look at the book of Revelation, is our pastors put it as it's actually it's a book of redemption, and a lot of people think it's a book of judgment. So it depends on how you want to. It really depends on how you want to look at the book, because and then there are you have a 7 year period of time which is called the tribulation period, and there are three beliefs within Christianity that of the timing of the rapture. And by the rapture, that means when Christ comes back, he doesn't come all the way back down to earth, but he comes back, and all of the people who are saved that belong to him will be souls and bodies reunited and called up into the sky with him. and that marks the beginning of the tribulation. So that's a pre-tribulation belief. There are some that believe that that event will happen at the midpoint of the tribulation, and there are people who believe that it will happen at the end of the tribulation. But one thing that doesn't change is John's description of what he saw during that 7 year time period on earth. And so, Revelation, John was given this revelation through God as a warning. And he starts out Revelation going and speaking to these 7 different churches. And each of those churches had a characteristic that was like glaringly obvious for that church. And so if you look at, there's 7 churches in Asia, and if you look at it, 6 of those 7 churches we've lived through them throughout history.
Lived through.
And
by we've lived through them.
Like basically the way that the church is perceived, and the way that the church as a whole, not just a building of a church. Like if you, and I'm kind of looking through these notes. I mean, I take a lot of notes. But if you look at like the church at Ephesus, in Ephesus, Turkey, they were a backslidden church, if you will. They were a church that were still going through the motions, but they lost their love of Jesus. And then you look at another church, the church in Smyrna. It was if you go through history, you're looking at AD like 100 to 313, 315 AD. So this was way after. He's describing this church and the vision that he sees, but it was faithful through all persecution. So it was a futuristic look at how these different churches, and I don't mean just a building of a church, I mean like God's church, how they were going to react. And right now is the time period of the 7th church, which is just, it means it's a lukewarm church. And I know this sounds bananas. Trust me, it sounds bananas to me, and I've read it and studied it and going through a study right now. I can't sit here and tell you that this sounds sane to me at times. But like you said, you're starting to see history and current events backing it up. And and John talks about, how the mark of the beast and how many people will die all across the world, and one world government and one world currencies and all of this stuff. And you have to think, this was thousands of years ago, when the only way you could get somewhere was either walking on a back of a donkey or in a boat. They didn't travel outside of this area of the world. But he was convinced and wrote it down 2,000 years ago or more that the entire world was going to be affected by stuff. And just thinking about that.
I know that's where I'm like, I don't know how
Yeah.
people can look at this as complete fiction or nonsense. I know a lot of it sounds like it, but it's like when you see things starting to coalesce into what seems to be straight up prophecy, how do you just laugh it off?
I know.
And like just the way things are going. Like, I mean, I have this thought that it's like people seem to have it in our DNA or in our programming to be the authors of our own destruction. It's like,
we are.
And there's signs in the past of civilizations that have ended. It's that people think we're very advanced and something happened to end them. It's like, was it a war? Like it's almost like we have this, we reset ourselves every certain number of years. I mean, that might contradict what the Bible says, but like I've had that thought before as well, that it seems like humans get to a point or a pinnacle, and then something happens, whether it's natural or they cause it or whatever. Some sort of apocalypse seems to happen and everything resets. And I mean, like on the globalist side of things, they're literally talking about a great reset right now. And like, agenda for 2030. It's
Yep.
frightening. And like
It is.
when you look at it, it's like, yes, this sounds good. We need this. Like we've got a whole population of people on this planet that are terrified about the way things are going. So of course, if you have a group of people that are like, we can fix this, you just need to
Mm,
accept this. Some people think that they're
yep.
causing a lot of the issues, and when it comes to war, it's hard not to think. But like,
I know.
I don't
And
know,
and
everything just
so during this discussion, I said that we're in the era of the lukewarm church, and they don't want to offend. The church doesn't want to offend anyone. The church is too shy and meek, and they separate the church from the world, and they're basically like, well, we're just going to take care of what we've got going on and let the world just fall apart around us, and the more you get into it, there's and it's hard to read. I mean, it's this book was opened and this seal was broken and this happened and that happened, and you've got beasts with 7 heads, and what's the symbolism behind all of that? But it comes down to, with the Antichrist, it will be somebody who rises up from a small nation and rises up and has the answer for everybody. And there will be a religious leader that comes in right behind him and says, he's got the answer to fix all of the earthly stuff. I have the answer to fix all the spiritual stuff. So we're going to have one government, one religion. We're done. This is how it's going to work. And you're going to have millions and millions and millions of people think this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to planet Earth. This is amazing. And so I believe in the pre-tribulation rapture. I believe that Christ will descend not all the way down to the earth. All the people who are truly saved will be caught up into the air with him, and they're gone. And there will be a lot of people, and honestly, it could be me, that thought they had everything figured out and thought that they had put everything over in God. And you're going to be looking around, and people you went to church with just disappear. And I don't know if you've ever looked at the Left Behind books, the Left Behind movies, that series. It was Tim LaHaye and something Jenkins.
is it based
They
on the
wrote
rapture?
it is. It's the whole book of Revelation. I
Okay.
think there's 7 books in it,
Okay.
but the first one's called Left Behind, and it goes through, and that is the pre-tribulation view, is that, and it was, talking about in those books, it was like, imagine you're in an airplane, and the pilot and the co-pilot get raptured. That plane's coming down.
Mm-hmm.
You're driving down the road, and somebody driving a semi beside you is raptured, and it comes over and hits you. So it's one of these things where you don't want to wait until you see it happen and then start trying to believe,
Right.
because that person's rapture may lead to your death. That kind of stuff. So the whole thing is to have to be ready for when it comes. And all of this stuff that's getting, all this stuff, the governments right now, they're setting it up. They're setting every bit of this. The revelation is unfolding right before our eyes. And I mean, I know that people thought World War One, they thought Christ was coming back. World War Two, they thought that was going to be the end of the world. All this, but I mean, really, the Bible says that Jesus doesn't even know when he's coming back. Only God the Father. And when God the Father tells him, go get my people, that's when we go. And so that next 3.5 years, the first half of that tribulation, is just going to be, it's going to be terrible. You're going to have Christians that realize they weren't as Christian as they thought they were and put all their faith in Christ. They're going to be martyred. They're going to be killed. It's going to be war after war after war after war on this planet. And halfway through that war is when the Antichrist and the religious leader and all that show up. And they, people, like, it won't be something that you, it's not going to be this blanket, everybody take the mark, whatever the mark is. Um, you will have to accept it and pledge your allegiance to that ruler and that religious ruler. And that's how you get it. And that's the only way you'll be able to buy and sell. You won't be able to do anything. So you're going to have a bunch of believers at that point that will probably starve to death or be put to death because they refuse to take the mark.
Mhm.
You know, but a lot of people think that the mark of the beast is already here. That, you know, people thought cell phones were the mark of the beast. Honestly, you know, and there's so much confusion around it all. And it actually says in the Bible, um, in John, that the devil is the father of lies and that all lies come from evil, from the devil, and that he's the author of confusion and Christ is the author of truth. So if you truly believe in the Bible, that the Bible is true and it contradicts what the Bible says, then it has to be false.
I'm not sure I follow.
So if I believe that all truth in this world comes from this book, and it's not the people who wrote it, it's it was divinely inspired writings that survive time, that don't contradict each other across the whole book, you know, all this. Um, if you anchor your beliefs in the Bible as it is the truth, then everything that goes against what it says in the Bible can't be true.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sort of.
Because you've
Like
got so
I
many
think I
people
need an
saying,
example.
well, you've got so many people running around saying, well, this is my truth. This is her truth.
Right. Yeah.
This is
And
his truth. It's not true unless you can back it up.
yeah.
And if you back up what you're doing or not doing with the word of God, and you believe that the word of God is the truth, then there is no my truth or Neil's truth or who had Rocket Dog's truth to throw Matt in here. You know, there is a truth. There is the truth. And if you put your faith in that truth, then it makes it very easy for you to see the lies that are being told to you and to your kids and to everybody else.
Okay.
And there is no, well, my truth is I was, you know, this or that or whatever. And, you know, it's just, like I said earlier, it's easy to follow the rules when you're the one that makes the rules.
Yeah.
So if it's my truth, then I can do whatever I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I can, I can go in New York City and pull out $900 worth of stuff off the shelves and not go to jail because that's how they're policing in New York City right now.
Yeah. It feels like all of the policies are almost meant to make everything descend into chaos.
Yep.
It feels that way. I don't see how you can view it as anything other than that. When you see videos of big box stores where people are walking in and just taking whatever, and I,
Oh,
I don't know, like why we've just lost our way, I think, in a lot of ways, and I feel like it's only going to get worse.
yeah.
So
And
I'm not sure where I land on Bible prophecy. Obviously, I'm considering this, and like I'm not going to sit here and pretend that after this conversation I'm becoming born again. But
right.
I think you know where I am. I'm certainly like seeing things and trying to figure things out for myself. And I like that's why I appreciate you coming on to talk frankly about this, because whatever people think about Christians and Baptists and all this, I know that you're a good man. And I really admire
Well,
what
thank
you've
you,
got to
buddy.
say. And I appreciate you saying this to me on my podcast. I expect there's going to be some people who think that I'm crazy for even having this. But I
Oh yeah,
know,
you'll have people watching it and they'll think, who is this ignorant hillbilly
yeah, or why is he,
from? Yeah, like, and that's part of it, you know. But at the same time, with Remy playing soccer, if you were his coach and you made him stay after practice and run six extra sprints and take 50 extra shots above and beyond what the rest of the team did, and you knew you were doing that for him because those were the places he needed to work, you're going to have half of your soccer parents think, man, he's doing something really good. I may let my kid stay. And you're going to have the other half of the parents saying he's a dictator. He's evil. This is
yeah,
ridiculous. Why is he doing this?
yeah,
And no matter what we do, there will always be somebody. The world has successfully, you can say that the devil did it. You can say however you want to look at it, but the world has successfully created an atmosphere where everybody is against something. There's no cohesion anymore. Everybody's against something.
we're so split up into little groups of
Yep.
interests. And the way I've heard it described is like we put ourselves in like a tribe, whatever that is, whether it's a political tribe or a religious tribe or whatever. And anything outside of that, we just, it's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. And I mean, you're a good man. You're a great dad. Um, it's evident in the way you live your life and the fact that you starting this podcast. Um, just to try to talk about good things, and you're already going against a system and swimming upstream kind of in a system that's not designed for people to be good anymore.
Feels that way. It feels that
It's
way.
the golden rule has changed. I was in an office yesterday doing a lunch and we were talking and this lady was talking about her kid being bullied at school. And she said, it's so corny when I say that we grew up with the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And she said, that has been replaced with do unto others before they do unto you.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's like, I don't know where society's going, and my kids are in a Christian school. They're not, they're not angels. They're not, they're teenage kids that have the same problems that every other teenage kid has. But the support group that they're in at that school versus a public school is the support group that families used to provide their kids when we were little, and there's been this division of the nuclear family. you know it went forever that you didn't need a dad because the moms were strong and women could do everything and they could do all this, and now it's to the point to where the kids don't even need parents anymore.
It's a weird thing, and I don't really want to get into the
Oh
trans
no, I don't either,
stuff in
but
schools, but I do find it weird how people are so many people seem to be on board with trusting the state to decide what's best for your kids, whether
yep.
like the state gets it wrong again and again and again. They can't fix anything. All they
Yep.
can do is take from you and distribute to, in the form of taxes. Why do
Mm-hmm.
when did we decide that our governments know what's best for our kids? It's a
I know.
really it's a really strange time, and that goes back to the two sorts of people that I see emerging are the ones who are still want to think and do for themselves, and then there's the other
Yeah.
people who are happy to kind of get in line and with this weird obedient, like, do as you're say, do as you're told, we've got this. And like, it's really really weird to me, like, why is it that people who talk about things like freedom and stuff are like, or have a flag for their country, I trust me, I'm not a super patriotic guy, but why do we villainize people who talk about things like freedom of speech? Why is that such a controversial subject in itself right now?
I think because
Anytime somebody kind of has these conversations or speaks out against what I consider the mainstream, questions anything, they're called a crazy conspiracy theorist or
yep,
alt-right. Like, it feels like there's just this, like, they want to jam us all into this one weird belief system where we can only use certain words, we can only do certain things, we can only take the medicine. Like, everything is about obedience in the future. And
it is. It's all about control.
yeah,
It's and to kind of go biblical with it a little bit. If you look the 33 years that Christ was here, the Jews hated him because they didn't have control. The Romans hated because they didn't have control. So you had the largest religious organization and the largest government. They looked at him because he was so different, because he said things that nobody should be able to say, and they hated him. And you think globally now of how many religious leaders, and I use that term loosely, you think about how many world leaders. It all comes down to control. And I'm not saying that I'm not conspiracy theory, that the COVID vaccine was a microchip and all that stuff. That's not the control I'm talking about.
no, it's just it's, for me, COVID was about setting a precedent of
Oh,
acceptance
absolutely.
of new rules that are just going to be the way. Like, I mean,
Yep.
I'm kind of, as angry as I am about it, I'm kind of thankful that it happened, because it gave me a glimpse of what our governments are capable of. And I
Oh
know
yeah.
some people think it was necessary or good or in their interest. I'm get mad at me for saying this. I totally disagree.
Hmm.
It's not, no government can sort out everything for everybody. It's
No.
impossible. And the only way they can, quote unquote, effectively do that, or get rid of disinformation, is by censoring, silencing, firing. To me,
Yep.
that's not a consensus. That's just,
No.
we're shutting up all the voices that we don't want to hear because they're going against our message. And that's my biggest, I think, frustration out of everything that's going on in the world right now, is like the way that it feels like the left is extremely dogmatic about whatever their messaging is. Don't question
Hmm.
it. If you question anything that we are saying, it's because you're a bad person or you're
Yep.
controversial, and you should be shut up. You shouldn't have a platform. We have a government here in Canada that wants to crack down on podcasts now. And it's like, why? Like, if you're that concerned about voices that go against what you're saying, to me, that's a sure sign that those voices need to be heard.
Yeah.
I think my biggest anger in the world is against censorship that's going on. And there are
Yep.
too many people that think it's right because they might align with the side, or they think they align with the side that's doing it. You know what I mean? Like, we'll say the left. The left seems to be dominating Western democracies right now in Canada, the United
Oh,
States,
absolutely.
and the UK. Like,
Absolutely.
I listen to a lot of podcasts that are actually, the hosts are in those three countries, and they're all on a very similar trend. And it's all like, and I've always like been a pretty liberal leaning person, but the left has become this weird, like, they call it progressive, but to me it's like, it's not, it doesn't feel progressive. It feels
No.
like you're going to do as we say. And if you question anything, even, well, we're just going to silence you. And that's why it's extremely dangerous for everybody to accept that, yeah, you're going to have this thing that you can buy and sell. It's super convenient, but we can shut it off. That's the
Hmm.
fear, right? Like, we can shut that off. And if you think that sounds crazy, well, look at what we did in Canada to people who were protesting during COVID. Whether you agree with what they were protesting or not, the fact that the government could shut down bank accounts for people who supported it, and
Yep.
ultimately all they were wanted was freedom of choice. But that, at that time, that choice was evil, because it went against what they were telling everybody, the only thing we could do to get out of this problem.
Hmm.
So that's why I have so much anger about it all. It's like, you're not, there is no one narrative or one truth when it comes to people. There's our side, which might be, skewed a certain way or through our lens, and we need you to believe it. And if you question it, we're done with you.
We're
I
done
don't
with you.
like that. For me, freedom is just choice. It's freedom to use the word you need, or to be able to talk about or question things without being canceled for it. And
Yeah, well, Trudeau may shut this one down after today. So,
oh, I've never disliked anybody as much as our prime minister. And I
well, I mean,
you know what? I think the
and here's
problem
my
is,
thing.
and can't, sorry, I'll just finish this and
Yeah.
I think the problem in Canada, United States, and the UK is that we're so like politically aligned. Whatever my
Hmm.
party says, we become so, too many of us are so brainwashed to be like, I'm a liberal, he's a liberal, I'll just go with what he
Yep.
says because that conservative guy's bad. Like that's
Yep.
how binary we are with our thinking. And we have no input because we just align ourselves to a party and agree with whatever they accept. And if you're liberal and it's a liberal guy wearing, I consider it's like a mask because everything they do, they
It
say
is.
it's out of decency and necessity, and it's virtuous, but it doesn't feel it to me. It feels anything where you exhibit control or censorship or whatever you want to call it, authoritarian type of system over the people is where I start to get angry and fed up with
Hmm.
it.
And that's like the, politics here. Of the billions of people 35 and older in the United States, I find it so hard to believe that Donald Trump and Joe Biden were the best we had.
It's the most absurd thing ever.
Regardless of how you feel about either of those people, it, and so then I started thinking, and I was born in 1976. So in 76, you had Jimmy Carter, but George Bush Sr. was in the government to a degree. Then you had Reagan. Bush was there. And you go through all of history and you go, Reagan, Clinton, Bush, all Obama. But there was a Reagan or a Clinton in high levels of power, or Bush or a Clinton in high levels of power for my entire life. And I was thinking that doesn't organically happen.
No.
To
One of the
have
things,
to have those two families that involved, it does not organically happen. And then, you can go down the rabbit holes of secret societies and all this different stuff, but which I'm sure they exist. But the bigger picture of that is, you know, we're an elective republic. We're not really a democracy over here. I mean, we're just not. But when you think about the options that we're given to be the leaders, are the options that are picked for us by a group of people, and we're just supposed to say, if you, like you said, if you agree with this one, vote for that one. If you agree for this one, vote for him. That one, vote for him. Whatever. And
I think about
it
like,
there's
sorry, continue.
no,
Sorry.
there's just no. And I mean, and again, to bring it back into faith. It says throughout the Bible that we're supposed to be in this world, but not of this world. And
Well,
that was really confused me for a long time. We have to live in this world. This is where we are, but we don't have to become such an integral part of the nonsense and the confusion and all the stuff that's going on out in it. We don't need to be a part of that. We're here, but we need to stand strong in our faith and do what's best for us and our family based on the strength that we have in our faith, and let the politics be the politics. You know, vote for the person you feel like best lines up with your beliefs, and go from there. And it's a lot of people make fun of Christians. And like I said, I apologize for the comments you're going to get because of this dumb hillbilly from Kentucky.
Helps me
But
filter out helps me filter out the
a,
people I want to listen to be honest with you.
a lot of people, that's that's their problem with Christians, is because we've given control to God.
I've thought that as well. It's like it must be extremely frustrating for people who want you to comply with their beliefs that you're kind of like, no.
Yeah.
It's because there's a self-righteousness to it too. These people,
Oh, absolutely.
like the extreme people on the left, like they're so convinced of themselves and their own virtue that anybody who questions it or doesn't do what they do is just
Yep.
it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing.
And we live in a world where it's easy for people to say, yes, I believe in aliens. Yes, I believe in Bigfoot. Yes, I
Which I do.
believe in, well, yeah, I mean, I fully believe Bigfoot's here.
Awesome.
Um, oh, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole the other day with aliens
Yeah.
and fallen angels. That was a deep rabbit hole. If you ever want to go down that
Oh,
one, I'll send you
oh
the
yeah.
links.
The YouTube algorithm
Uh,
has me.
yeah,
That's why I'm trying to get
but
some sort of compass going that I can say this.
you know, and yeah, and if anybody opens up Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, they have no trouble believing what some random person with 150,000 followers woke up this morning and said was going to be the truth. And so now everybody believes it.
That's a thing I've thought about a lot recently as well. It's like really every person on this earth, whether you're religious or non-religious, like we're all just believing something that we've been told. There's very few things in your life that you will know for fact because it happened to you or you witnessed it or you did the scientific experiment or God spoke to you. There's not
Yep.
much. So we're all just making a choice at the end of the day as to what we believe in.
And so when
That's
when the media is controlled and the messages that are coming out are controlled, anybody who tries to find another truth or what it find out, even to prove if what they're saying is the truth, you're this social pariah that you can't nobody needs to deal with because you're a lunatic and you're an idiot because you don't just automatically take it. And I think that is, we talked about being born again earlier, and it's when you become a Christian, you'll know it. God will tell you, we're in this together.
I'm gonna ask you,
And yeah,
when you say God will tell you, is it literally a voice or is it like your conscience? Because I hear people talk about,
it,
you know,
I have heard people say that they have seen like an image in a church and prayed to it. I've heard people say that they've audibly heard a voice talking to them. I can truly say that wasn't was me at all. That didn't happen. I can't tell you that it can't because
but
I
for
don't know
you,
the answer to that.
for
But for
you, was it a
me,
feeling?
it was this feeling of every for that second or however long it was, every burden, every problem, everything. I it literally felt like somebody had taken a huge physical weight off of my body, and it was just this feeling of peace and this feeling of I've got you, everything's going to be okay. And the only way that I can kind of make sense of that is if your kid climbs up a tree and they're scared to death to get down when they're little and they won't come down, but they know that if they know that if they can get into your arms as your dad as their dad and you wrap your arms around that kid, they know they're safe and they know they're coming down out of that tree.
That
They may
security.
not be they may not be able to describe how that feels, but they know how it feels.
Hmm.
When you as a dad grabs your kid and hangs on, they know at that minute that they don't have a care in the world. Their father has got a hold of them and is holding them and keeping them safe. And that's what I felt. That's how I felt.
Okay.
That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just it's. I mean, I struggle every day. I'm not going to lie. We have every piece of information, every piece of. I mean, we with the phones that we have in our hands, we can find anything we want to find online. And we can browse and we can look at stuff that we think nobody's looking at. Nobody can see this but us, but me. Nobody knows I'm looking at this or nobody knows I'm doing this. And, we're born with a conscience. Well, where did that conscience come from?
Good question. That's something I think about a lot.
And did God snap his fingers and create the world in 7 days? As we look at 7 days, I don't know. I don't know if it was 7 24-hour days, but I do know that he did it. And even when you first get saved, and like I said, the whole born again thing, you start off as an infant again spiritually. It's not like you're saved today and you wake up tomorrow and you are the greatest theologian and Bible scholar in the history of the world.
It's a path.
It's a path. And you have to look at it. I think that's why born again is such a good term. You have to look at it like you're starting all over again spiritually. And you have to, just like a baby, you have to learn how to hold your head up on your own. You have to learn how to sit up on your own, crawl on your own, walk on your own, run on your own.
And I suppose
You,
that makes sense as well, because starting from scratch is how you change who you are. So you don't
yep,
just go in with the same person you've always been and just add bits and pieces here and there. It makes
yep.
sense.
But the beauty of it is you're not a baby that was born out in the middle of a jungle with nobody to help you. You're born a baby that has a father that all you have to do is cry out, say his name, and he's there to pick you up when you fall down. He's there to hold your hand when you learn how to walk. It becomes, and like I don't pray out loud. I have a horrible time praying orally, verbally, where people can hear me.
That was something I wanted to ask you. Is it
Yeah,
something
go
that
ahead.
people do just in their mind? Because frankly, I do. I do.
Hmm.
I pray. I don't know if I'm doing it right or not, but I pray in my
Hmm.
mind a lot lately. I pray for
Yeah.
people, and but I always just do it internally. So I don't know if it even is it a rule that you have to do it
No,
externally? No.
nope, nope. It's so our pastor at church knows that. I mean, I talk for a living. I sell all day long. I'm outgoing. I'm extroverted most of the time, but I didn't like to pray out loud. And so our pastor is a good friend of ours too, but he started calling on me at church to like give the closing prayer, just a quick thank you for everything. We do prayer requests if people have specific needs, and then the entire church prays for those needs before like singing and that stuff. And I asked him one day, I said, "Why are you picking on me?" And kind of laughed. And he said, "I'm not picking on you." He said, "You never pray out loud." And he said, "And that's fine." But he said, "Did you not pray out loud because you felt like you weren't worthy for other people to hear what you were asking for or thanking God for?" And I kind of guess I did. And I'm still not I don't pray out loud unless he's like something like that. But like if I'm praying, sometimes if I'm in my car by myself, I'll be out loud. But to me, it's it's a conversation with me and God.
Oh, you're muted.
Are you back?
Yeah, yeah. I just heard
All right. Yeah,
conversation with you
I
and
got a
God. You
phone.
said.
Sorry, I got a phone call.
Okay. That's okay.
Um, but yeah, but it's like, I didn't, I, you never feel worthy. You realize how much of a sinner that you were, but God does it. God, he takes it away. And, and I pray to myself, you know, I close my eyes. Sometimes I'll sit in the car. I'll roll down the windows, hang out in the car when I'm working and just take in the breeze and realize that everything we have is through him. And this peace comes over you that you really don't even have to say or think any kind of specific prayer. It's just, you're surrendering self at that point. But yeah, you can, and I mean, some people say that the only prayer that God hears from people who aren't saved is the prayer asking for salvation. I'm not going to get into all that either. Now if you're praying to, the golden statue that you have on your desk that you picked up at a monastery in Tibet somewhere, like I'm going to say you're probably not doing it right, but you know, but it's a personal relationship,
Mhm.
and that personal relationship will grow the more that you are kind of obedient, the more that you put your faith there. And you talk about reading the Bible and not being able to understand it, it will change that if you're praying, God, please help me understand what this means, you know, because there's a lot in the Bible that's just, that Old Testament law was tough. I mean, like, you know,
Wonder if that was intentional so that it was like certain people would interpret it, or you know what I mean? Like information. It's
yep,
like reading a legal contract. You need a lawyer to read it often to even make sense
yeah,
of it. Like I wonder if that
yep.
was an intentional thing when it was written. It shouldn't
And
be. I mean, if I were
it
going to
shouldn't be.
criticize the Bible,
Yeah,
there should be a Coles Notes version of it for dummies like me who just want to understand.
yeah. Well, there are so many resources out there, and that's another thing. You got to kind of, well, who do you trust? Who do you not trust? That sort of thing. And it's one of those things. You just pray that God, if this is what you want me to see, just please help me see it. And I've told a lot of people that, depending on what version you get, but I mean, there's a lot right here. If you don't believe completely in anything in this book, other than if the only thing you believe is that Christ was here, he lived, he was crucified and resurrected from the dead, and through that, he is the only way that my sins will be forgiven. The rest of the book, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but your understanding of the rest of that book will come or it won't come.
Mhm. Can I ask you a frank question about
Absolutely.
like one of the things about church and religion and the idea of heaven and the afterlife? Like, why do you think that it's, I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to answer for your God, but why do you think what's the point of all of it? Like, we come here, we have these rules to live by, and then we go there. Like, why even, I don't know. Like, does it make any sense to you? Like, is there a reason that they tell you that?
No, I mean, the general vague answer is that this was all done for God's glory. That's the general vague answer. Um,
His ego, Frank?
I
I
I
mean,
don't think. I mean, there's times I think it's it's just one big social experiment to see if it'll work. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like and I mean, part of it too is, I don't know. I mean, I wish I had an answer for that, but I really don't know. And I've wondered that. I'm like, if we were all, because God said before we were in the womb, He knew us. Like our spirit, our souls came from heaven and came into an earthly body here. And why didn't He just leave us all there?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
have no idea.
Yeah. It's almost like a test.
And
Do you think it's like a
yeah,
test? Like you're
I
here,
think
let's.
it is. And yeah, and I mean, when you think about Adam and Eve, why did God create the one tree in the garden that they couldn't eat from? What was the point? If He would have left that tree out,
Yeah, they never
he
would
could
have
have
committed
sent
that sin.
he could have sent all of humanity to earth, and there would have never been any evil.
Then that's a really good question. I think that's what a lot of people, when they question the existence of God and the purpose of religion, is like, when you talk about evil, why does God let these things happen, and all these awful things that we do to each other? But I think, and looking at the tree with the forbidden apple, it's all about choice. It's You need to have
It is.
choice. You need to have choice to see where you land.
Yep.
I guess, like, if we're looking at the real world, like, and why I think choice is important. I don't like my choices being taken away from me, whether it's based on a religion or a shitty corrupt government. I don't like somebody
Yep.
telling me what's acceptable, and I want to come to these conclusions on myself. Um, don't know where I was going with that. We're
Well, and
almost.
one thing I've always told my kids is you always have to remember that if you say yes to something, by design and by definition, you are automatically saying no to something else.
Yeah, there's a trade-off.
And I tell the kids that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, you need to understand that if you say, hey, yes, I will do this, then you are saying, no, I won't do something else. I'll be doing this. And, a lot of people get bogged down with choice. Like I said, some people believe that, hey, it's your choice. You just do whatever you want to do and wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm a Christian. And nothing changes, nothing happens. You just, hey, I'm a Christian. And, your works without your faith, true faith in God, are pretty much useless. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to be good enough to get there. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, we're at almost an hour and a half.
I know, I know.
There's more we could go into. Would you want to do another one someday?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because, like,
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about some of the other things that are going on, like in the music industry, particularly, like all the outright satanic shit we're seeing in
It is.
concerts and stuff. Like, it's, to me, like, even if you're not religious, you should be like, why is this? Why is this here? Why
I
is
know.
and why it should be concerning to people who aren't even religious, that so much of the messaging is there's a weird dark aspect to it. But I think maybe
Yeah.
we.
And it's funny because people are like, well, we don't believe in God and the Bible, so we're going to get out and dress like the devil.
Yeah.
So if you don't believe in God and the Bible, where did the devil come from?
Hmm.
And nobody can answer those questions. like,
Yeah.
like, like you can't say you don't believe that this stuff is real and only take the little piece out of it that you want to be real.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
also, it's I've seen the argument, like, it's all, some people, if I comment on that and why I think it's weird and concerning, they'll be like, well, it doesn't matter. It's like religion isn't real. It's like, it's real to the people who are celebrating it and having these ceremonies.
mhm.
I believe. I don't think they're
Oh, it
doing.
is.
I don't believe that they're doing these things
No,
without true intent. But I think they're trusting that most people are just going to raise their arms and sing along.
yep.
It's.
And a lot of the stuff that they're doing, if you read how cultures, even the Israelites at times, acted in the Old Testament, they're reenacting Old Testament rituals to false gods
It's.
to the letter.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's legitimately what they're doing.
Yeah. So whether you believe in it or not, there's something
Yep.
there that I think people should be more concerned about.
Yeah. But man, I enjoyed this. I was so nervous. I want you to know I was, because this is a topic that, everybody always says don't talk religion and politics,
Hmm.
and I just in the last few years, I have become strong enough in my faith that I will share it with other people. And I will try to come across as I want to give you how I feel
Yes.
and let you make your own decision. I'm not going to judge you one way or the other. I'm not, this is, this is truly how I feel.
I appreciate that about you as well. And I wanted to say that before we go. You're not coming off as preachy. You're just saying, this is my
Good.
faith. This is what I believe. Like, I think you're very respectful in the way you talk about your faith and your beliefs. And I certainly appreciate you coming on here. I'm glad. I hope you were comfortable now. Like,
Oh well, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
I'm a
I'm
little, I
good.
was,
And
JC, as much as I wanted to have this talk, like I was just, my last guest that I had on, we were talking about how I had a few weeks where I was thinking about this and kind of having reservations about not just this specific topic, but being a voice, whether it's small. I'm not pretending I have a ton of people listening to this, but being a voice that kind of contradicts a lot of the things that were not, are considered incontradictable by
mhm,
the left right now, frankly. And
yep,
I'm a little afraid of people mocking me or thinking this is crazy or being, I have those fears, but I think it's important enough to have the conversation as well, because I think if anybody listens to this, I think they should at least look a little more closely around the things that are going on in the world. Maybe you don't have to pick up a Bible, but I
yeah,
think you should be more questioning and use a little more discernment to try to find some truth for yourself. Like anybody with a decent conscience at this stage in the way the world's going should see, like, some of the stuff that's going on is very concerning. And
yep.
maybe you want to consider trying to get right with God, or just try to be a I don't want to say a good person now, because you're like, even good people will go to hell,
Well,
but you know what I
well,
mean?
yeah,
Like,
but
I don't
it
know the truth. I never will. I'm just trying to
no,
figure something out. The thing that's been appealing to me lately about when I think about religion is, like, I think I heard the quote, Jesus is the truth. And it's like, that's maybe something worth hanging your hat on, if anything, in today's world where there's so much confusion, there's so much doubt. Everybody's telling you something, you don't know if it's true or not. Maybe that's the place to look for people.
yeah, and to me, it's my belief in Christ is my North Star. That's if I may get off course, I'm human, and it may be the darkest night ever, but I can look up in the sky and I see my North Star metaphorically, but I see that North Star shining through, and I can get myself back on track and know that that's where I'm supposed to be. That's where I'm supposed to be going. That's what I'm supposed to be following.
I
And
don't
it,
and I don't, knowing how you are and how you go about your life, and you're sharing this with us, like, doesn't seem like it's a bad way to be. Like,
thank you, buddy.
you're not domineering anybody or judging people. You're just doing your thing and doing it well. So I really
Yep.
appreciate that about you, and I really thank you for doing this for me. It means
I
a
thank
lot.
you for having me on, and get notes of what we didn't talk about, and we'll do it again.
Yeah, I absolutely would like to do this, and thank you
Yeah.
very much, JC. So we'll leave it at that, and there will probably be a part two when the next batch of prophecies become. We'll do a follow up. All right, buddy.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
JC, I love you, brother. Thank you very much for
Love
doing
you.
it.
I love you too, man.
Okay, take care, buddy.